So there's like a book called Leaked Recipes, basically taking things from all these different emails that were leaked, like from WikiLeaks and all sorts, the Cheney emails. Like I love things that just kind of pick a lens and present, but then find all these really funny ways that humanity creeps in.
You're listening to the Taste Podcast. I'm senior editor Anna Heasel, here with editor-in-chief Matt Rodbard.
Today on the show, I'm catching up with Paige Lipari, the chef and owner of Archestratus, her Greenpoint, Brooklyn café and cookbook store that has become a favorite of the Taste staff.
The Taste office used to be in the neighborhood, and most of the staff would sneak away for an afternoon cookie or arancini and browse the shelves of new and vintage cookbooks.
Oh my gosh, I used to go, I would say, I had my run in the afternoon, like lunchtime for the arancini or a sandwich and a Sicilian soda. I'd also hit the like 3:30, 4 p.m. cookie run at Archestratus. I'd usually buy a copy of Gastronomica where they actually had a stack of vintage Gastronomicas, so I'd buy one of those. And really, in this interview, it's just we talk about her store, which is an absolute gem, and the way that she curates it. We also talk about some of the expansions she's made over the past fall, how she survived the pandemic. We also talk about the book that Paige may or may not be working on, the cookbook, a cookbook store owner writing her own cookbook. Can you imagine that?
I can't wait to read it. Here's Matt with Paige, and make sure to visit tastecooking.com for our latest stories and recipes, and to sign up for our newsletters, which drop on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Paige Lipari, welcome to the Taste Podcast.
Thank you, Matt. I'm so excited.
Longtime arancini fan, first time meeting you in person.
I know.
It's so wonderful to have you here.
I feel the same.
First off, I'm such a fan of your bookstore. Our office at Taste was around the corner. I used to go there and just buy books. I used to buy arancini and your sandwiches. Yeah. Let's talk about your expansion. You went from a smaller space to a larger space.
Yes.
And so explain what you've done there, because it's so exciting.
Thank you. We've always had one space around the corner on Huron Street, and kind of started to, we always did multiple things in this little space and kind of put everything on wheels and just kind of shifted around like we were putting on a show, like every time we needed to do something different. And I loved that. But I started to feel like if we had just had a little more space, so many possibilities would open up. And so I, a few years ago, started to think about a space maybe on a main drag and more square footage and going in more of that direction. And then February 2020, I almost signed a lease. And then my gut just was like, this isn't right. And the lease was right around the corner on Manhattan Avenue. And so for early February 2020, I was like, this isn't right. And I got out of the lease.
Amazing.
And then March 2020 happened, and we were, all in the midst of coronavirus. And so I had done all this research about expansion and about, had thought a lot about the direction that I wanted to expand. One of the things was grocery and prepared foods and going more in this direction. And so I was really I had been thinking about what then suddenly became the need of everybody in this neighborhood that I could then serve. And so we pivoted and started the one-stop shop pickup, and that really took off. And so I kind of gained more confidence that this was something that also needed to kind of come into the picture. Because we were doing a lot of events and those were suddenly just gone, but I knew one day they would come back. And then my neighbor Gustavo, who owns Headrush Barbershop, this is a space opened up because he was moving. He took over his mom's laundromat that was on the corner. Now we've moved the books over to the new space. And then the old space, we also really did a revamp of, and now that is much more of a grocery, Italian grocery, and prepared foods and larger menu. And then so we've got more space to do pop-up dinners and stuff.
I love that. Let's get to what you're cooking, because one thing, the draw of Archestratus has always been the menu there. not just the books and the grocery and the retail, but what are you doing right now in the cafe? And listeners, everyone needs to go check out the arancini. I mean, it's like one of my top 5 dishes in New York.
That's really, really nice.
It's true. So what are you making these days?
I've finally hired people to help me cook, which is absolutely a dream.
Yeah.
And so we have things like on the old menu, the rainbow cookies every day now, which is like huge for us.
My goodness, every single day.
Yeah, because it's a process to make those, and I was the only one that was making them for a long time. So we've got rainbow's cookie, we've got the whole cookie menu every day, and then we've got the sandwich menu that people like came to know and enjoy and come back for the sandwiches, and we have arancini that change all the time. And then I have other things that I'm going to be sort of rolling out and introducing within the next month. We have a few more people coming on board for our cooking staff. And I really am excited about sort of the direction, which is just bringing in more of the things that I would make for the Sicilian dinners that I used to do every week for the first few years, and more of those Middle Eastern influences that are in Sicilian cooking in a way that they aren't in other parts of Italy. So you've got like, your saffron, and you've got your golden raisins and your fennel, and like all these different like sweet and salty and sour flavors working together. And so I'm going to bring in a lot more things like, couscous and garlic chicken and lamb, and the couscous festival is in San Vito lo Capo in Sicily, and that's for all of the world. But a lot of people don't realize that couscous is very much a part of Sicilian cuisine.
100%, yeah.
And I'm also going to have a whole section of the menu just called eggplant, and it's going to have eggplant parm and eggplant caponata and roasted eggplant with amoio, and then also this thing called, well, I guess you would call it spiadine, but I grew up calling it spatini. So we're going to call it spatini. And it's just like a rolled fried eggplant with like pignoli nuts and tomato and cheese and parsley and breadcrumbs and onions.
And can we buy tickets online to these dinners, or you just show up?
Well, so right now, this fall, I'm doing tons of events, but it doesn't look like it online because I'm fulfilling and making good on my Aldemani's parties sort of campaign, which was like dinners from the future. Yeah. So I'm cooking starting in November, like a chicken parm dinner, eggplant parm, Sicilian dinners. So right now we are going to we're taking stock of everyone and seeing how many tickets we have left at the end of the day. And then we might be able to release more sort of like the week before.
Yeah, check out the website. We'll link to it in the show notes. And I think that's important, just to always like subscribe to the newsletter. It's just a fun read. And there's always, we'll get to the books very soon, but there's always some words of wisdom. There's always something fun happening at Archestratus. And of course, these dinners and these events. There's so many cool events happening. I wanted to have you in because this summer we had an interview and I ran on Taste, and we went over some of the books that you were looking forward to this fall. You mentioned Black Food. You mentioned this book called From Gujarat with Love, 100 Easy Indian Vegetarian Recipes by Veena Patel. So I wanted to hear first about your interest in Gujarati cuisine, because I felt when we had that interview, you were all about Gujarati cuisine, and I loved what you said. So let's first talk about that. Then we'll get into some other books.
Yeah, I'm really curious about it, and I'm just very interested in learning so much more. It feels really special, and like it's basically a part of India that is not very touristy, but absolutely beautiful, and like has many like famous Indian figures come from there. They are, I think, the largest producer of salt like in that region, and so like salt is in their cuisine in a way that is extremely unique, and like all the different types of salt that come from that region like are part of that cuisine. But the region is very influenced by Jainism, which is it's a religion that is, does not want to harm anything, doesn't want to harm animals. So it's a vegetarian cuisine that is coming out of Jainism. So, I feel like it's sort of treating all these vegetables as completely sacred and also treating them with proper cooks and bringing out their flavors in a way that's not approaching it from the point of view of, we are meat eaters, but we should be eating vegetables. It's like, no, we believe in this sort of sacred plant-based cuisine.
It's very holistic. It's not an arch or an orthodoxy
Right.
that you're going to put into a tweet.
Right. It's very deep.
Yeah.
And
it's culture. It's the culture, right? It's clear that you sell books that you read, that you review, that you really love. Obviously, you're not reading every book that you sell, but it's rare to me, and I think Celia Sachs shares this over in San Francisco at Omnivore, Matt Sartwell over at Kitchen Arts and Letters, and some of the great indies in America, the guys that are now serving. They actually carry books that they care about and that they want. They really have a passion for the words on the page and not just the cover image and the celebrity author.
Right.
So I think it's a sense when you go to Archestratus that you're going to discover new titles from the big houses and also the indies. That's my long way of saying what should we be looking for? Because I, as an editor, am looking towards you to just instruct and teach. What's cool that's being released this fall?
I think you have to have, and the thing that always attracted me to cookbooks was voice and point of view. And that's why the store is called Archestratus after a person, because I think that that's how we feel how we all connect is when you are just like going deep in your experience and your way of looking and your point of view. It actually becomes like a very universal moment. And so I love books that come from, they can only come from who wrote it. And that doesn't mean it has to be like super sentimental, emotional, poignant. It can be just a concept. So there's like a book called Leaked Recipes that is just like about how basically taking things from all these different emails that were leaked and like from WikiLeaks and all sorts, the Cheney emails, like all these, and just like looking at it with that lens. Like I love things that just kind of pick a lens and present, but then find all these really funny ways that humanity creeps into all of these
so that's
exchanges
leaked recipes.
And recipes. That's called Leaked Recipes.
And that's out this fall. Great.
Yes.
What's another title that you're really looking forward to?
I've been going through the new Carla book.
Carla Lalli Music?
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
And I'm so impressed with her. I'm just impressed with how she really taps into like her own, you can tell she just like cooks all the freaking time. Like she's just at home and she loves to cook. She's with her family and it's so authentic. And like when you were sort of had asked if there was some, gap that needed filling possibly in cookbooks. I always go like whenever I'm going through cookbooks, I go, oh, that really jumps out at me as something that you don't see a lot, which is like in her book, she is really cooking with several types of protein. And I just mused about how much I love vegetables and how excited I am about Gujarati. But it's also really exciting to have a cookbook that like is completely fearless in its approach of like cooking proteins in a weekday kind of way where you're like, you should not be afraid to like take on a ground lamb or a veal shank or like, it's just very approachable.
Yeah, the democracy in Carla's recipe development is there. It's clear. It's a book that I would call moderate in terms of complexity. It's not simple dishes and simple cooking, but she does take very complex ideas and brings it to like the middle ground, the middle level, and I feel like that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
And it's an exceptional book. I agree. I wrote about it a few weeks ago.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. What else are we looking forward to?
Oh my gosh. What else? I love Atlas Obscura. This is like very gifty book. I love a gifty book, but I usually don't love a gifty book. Like this is something that I think is so much fun and
it's the Gastro Obscura, right?
Yeah, it's Gastro Obscura, and it's after Atlas Obscura, the podcast which I love. And it's just a pleasure to sit down and discover all these little corners of the food world. I actually love the idea of looking around you and just like not having this idea that you need to travel to find something incredibly exciting, interesting, weird, So I really appreciate that kind of book. And it also is very much about profiling the people, again, that are involved in all of these little strange food corners of the world. So I love that book, and I love those people that are behind it. So.
Yeah, they're really smart. Their offices are around the corner as well in Greenpoint. We're in the same building as them.
Amazing.
Yeah. A few more. I feel like we're on a roll here.
I know,
and I know our listeners,
going.
It's gifting season right now.
Well, I have a really good one.
Yeah.
Which is Jam Bake and by Camilla Wynn. And I am coming off of like 2 incredible events with her. But this is the perfect book for people that don't know what to get the baker in their life, because it's not just a book about preserving. It's about how to use preserves within your baking. It is absolutely an amazing book on how to make jam and preserves. She has a very no-nonsense approach that is like attainable for anybody that likes to cook or bake. She's got so much knowledge and has experience, has tried all the different methods and has come upon this technique that is very easy. And also is just like an incredible teacher. Like she taught a class at the store. And there's a real difference when you have someone coming in who you go, oh, that's someone that knows how to communicate. Like I felt that way about like Sami Nostrat's book, like where you're just like, oh, you love to teach and share and like get these ideas across in a way that people can really like remember and understand them. And she's the same way. And so like her book reads in her voice, which is great. And her recipes are comforting and classic, but also very like creative and fun and hip. So it's just an incredible book to get the baker. Yeah, Jam Bake.
Jam Bake. And is there one more that we can mention? And also, first up, before you get to that last one, how do we buy books at Archestratus? What's the best way to do that?
The best way is to go to archestrat.us. And we have a whole section, like you can click on books and it'll go and list all the different categories, or you can just like search for them in the search box. It's great. You can
really find great treasures on the website. I love it. We'll link to it in the show notes.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's how we do it. Or you can give us a call.
Yeah.
Or an email to the store.
Give us one last one.
Okay. Oh my God, I gotta think about it. Okay, well, I mean Black Food, the Bryant Terry.
Yeah, Bryant Terry's. Let's go into that one. We've written about it on Taste, Bryant Terry's book called Black Food. But what's your point of view on this? It's a really unique and kind of boundary breaking book. I feel it's brand new in concept and form. Yeah.
Well, me and Bryant share an obsession with music, and I love that all of his books really take into account the sort of like the flow and like have interludes and have music pairings and like just really, really think about the reader's experience of the book. And it's honestly it's going through it, it just feels so fucking important and incredible, and like to have so many Black voices in one space and to have, I mean, it has energy. The book has energy. It's like when you come upon an ancient temple and you're like, what is the energy coming off of this ancient temple? It's like that, so it's and has so many different modes of expression, either through like recipes or essays,
poetry,
which I mean, for me, that's my kind of book, like one that really gets at the human comes at food via the human experience, mostly through art and less through skill. Like that just for me is my favorite thing. Yeah.
So that's Black Food by Bryant Terry. I wanted to ask you, and you referenced this previously, but I asked Matt Sartwell from Kitchen Arts and Letters this question. I've asked the team at Now Serving in Los Angeles this question, and I like to ask this to booksellers. It's just really good information for us as authors and writers of food. What are we missing in terms of books? There's, you talk to customers every day and they're requesting books. You are looking at the world of food. You're looking at the world, in front of you, and you're seeing cultures that are covered, cultures that are not covered. So what are we missing right now?
Well, it's actually really nice coming off of Black Food and going into this question, because I think I really am attracted to books and series that create community and really bring together the food community. Like there was this series that is no longer, but it was called Short Stack. Mm-hmm. And it was like little pamphlets, and they had they all have main ingredients, and then all these different authors.
Strawberries, tomatoes,
corn. Eggplant, chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
And each author was like an expert in that ingredient. And then you had this collection with, sort of curated by the right person, but bringing all these people together that felt just, you can feel like the community, the love in the community. And I would love to just see more of that, just to see more publishers do a series and have experts in the field wax poetic about whatever they want and ask them what they want to write about, and then just have them do it and see what happens.
You feel there's a demand for that from customers because this is a business. Of course, we need to make sure that books are being sold, and you think there's a real demand for that from your customers.
Definitely, because people, it's like why Substacks are taking off. It's like really these voices are so unique, and so
great. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, newsletters are like that. Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and it's like if you can find ways to have different voices that are clear and in a way that is a form and a content that customers can understand what's happening, and take it in very easily, then I think that's having that feeling of community and expertise and passion and excitement around something. That's what I think is lacking a little bit.
So at Archestratus, Paige, you don't only sell new books. You sell used vintage books. You sell vintage periodicals. I've paged through your piles of Gastronomica and picked up some really cool and weird issues. You have Old Bon Appetit, Gourmet. So I want to know just where do you find this stuff? Because it's so cool to see. Where do you find it?
Oh my gosh, I miss it so much, but I used to, and I will again very soon. And we talked about this a little bit.
Yeah.
Go to these different book sales around the tri-state area, and churches, libraries, schools, they're always having book sales. This is something that I went before I started the store for the first year before I started the store. Every month I would go to these sales, and it would be me and my dad and my Nona, and we had a plan because they're really intense, and you have to get Nona a chair, Papa gets a box, I run to the cookbooks, it's a whole thing. It's kind of scary, these book sales, and so there's a portion that come from those where I just sit on the floor and go picking through these different books, using my knowledge, using my intuition, just kind of going through, and it's a blast. The other thing is that I sort of at the beginning kind of shut down, we don't buy books, but now I'm starting to feel like that is something that I want to bring in again. Because sometimes people do donate things to me, and I kind of pick through and go, okay, this makes sense on the shelf, this doesn't. So I'm sort of interested in starting to develop more of those relationships with people that want to sell books and go to see. Sometimes I get lucky and have go and can pick through someone's amazing collection.
I've done that. That's a brilliant experience. Oh my gosh, private collections.
And you got to keep your eyes open too. Yeah. There's books everywhere.
What's your grail? What's something that you have been searching for? One that comes to mind?
Oh my God. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is something that I was talking about with one of the curators at this incredible film house called Light Industry in my neighborhood of Greenpoint. We're going to do, fingers crossed, a Marguerite Duras dinner, and I'm going to cook it. Cool. And because one of the curators has the Marguerite Duras cookbook, which is in French and incredibly rare. That's a holy grail that comes up. I cannot wait. The deal, this is all contingent upon me being allowed to handle this book.
With gloves on.
Yeah.
We ask everyone on the Taste podcast, if you could write a cookbook, you, Paige, who sells cookbooks, I want to know, without time or budget as a factor, what would that cookbook be?
So the first thought that I have is there's two answers. One is I don't want to write a cookbook. That's oneself, right?
Why? Because you want to stay objective and just
No, just because my passion is making environments, cooking, selling books. like 20 other things. And it's so funny to me that I don't have this like secret deep desire to write a cookbook. I really don't. Like if I wanted to, I think I probably would have already, or I would have like become a food writer or done all these other things. But the thing I really love to do is like hold space and be in create an environment and have this kind of like mysterious thing happen. And that can totally, that then led me, when I was thinking about like why I didn't want to write a cookbook and why I wanted to hold space for this mysterious chemistry that happens between people, then that was like, oh, well, that should be the cookbook. like the
That's
cookbook,
the second part of the answer.
The second part of the answer is like, okay, so if I had a cookbook, then it would have to sort of be something experiential that really created that really got the sense of place in it and sort of the spontaneity of conversation and the spontaneity of what it feels like to make arancini. Or like it would have to be able to capture those things. It would absolutely be all the Sicilian food that I love to make. And it would have to also be like sort of the poetry I like to write, which is like made up family inherited history that I fill in the gaps.
So
it would have to be all these kind of strange things. There would have to be probably like a board game that doesn't make any sense that pulls out in the middle. There'd have to be a CD or like a like that goes
a CD-ROM.
CD-ROM, a floppy disk with music on it. Yeah, it would have to just be bonkers.
I bet. And is there a book about arancini out there? Or is there like...
There isn't a book about arancini.
Well, there you go.
I know. And it's funny because someone once approached me about wanting to co-author an arancini book with me. And I was like, I think I'll just author it maybe one day.
Yeah, one day. That's my hope, is that there's maybe a book. But I think holding space and having this community built around Archestratus and what you're doing is being your top priority. We all benefit from that.
That's so nice. Thank you.
Paige Lipari, thank you for joining the Taste Podcast.
Thank you so much. I hope this made sense. I hope my words made sense.
150%.
Cool.
Cathy Erway, you are a cookbook author, a columnist, a journalist, a James Beard Award winner, and you're now on the Taste Podcast for the very first time.
Yay.
As a podcast elite or elite podcaster. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you here. So what is the status of your podcast situation right now? I want to hear, I know you've been on or hosted many podcasts in the past. So what are you doing these days?
So right now we're working on season 3 of Self-Evident. It's we're actually launching it in just a couple of weeks, the first couple episodes. And then so I'm the host, but it's really a collaborative podcast that's telling Asian American stories. So it's really storytelling sort of format, longer narrated, like edited pieces with a lot of journalism behind them. So it's like a lot of work goes into each episode.
Yeah, Self-Evident's been great.
Yeah.
The episodes I've caught have been great. Absolutely.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Yeah. But then there's your show that you host.
So then I've also hosted on the Heritage Radio Network, although I'm taking a break right now, an interview show called Eat Your Words, where I've had authors of food books on for something like 8 or 9 years.
Yeah.
I can't remember anymore.
Make sure to look back at those episodes, listener, because Cathy's OG podcaster, and I love those episodes. I would listen to everyone.
So
I really do. I mean,
amazing.
I wanted to bring you in to talk about Shelve It, which is a column you've written for Taste for the past couple months. I think we've run at this point 3 columns. We're working on our 4th, and also you ran a successful column called Know Your Chicken, which I thought was so fun. I loved every month you would write a different story about chicken. But let's talk about Shelve It. What's your goal with this column?
So Shelve It is about all these pantry staples that you might take for granted. I think it's really fascinating, each and every one of them. It's like, why do we have a canister of pepper that you grind? And, and it's like in every like American recipe. But it's like, how did this get here? And why just pepper, of all the spices in the world to end up here? So, pepper is not something I have written about actually for this, but each sort of piece so far has been a really fun deep dive that's been like taking me through a rabbit hole. And I don't know how to get out usually. So it's a lot of fun. And, it's just like everyday ingredients that you can take a closer look at when it comes to home cooking or, for any chef who's just interested in ingredients.
And I think a bit of the subtext, and this is something that Priya Krishna also touched on in her piece in the Times about the ethnic food aisle, is that some of these foods that you've written about, rock sugar, you're writing about sesame oil that's coming up soon, are sometimes put into the ethnic food aisle. I just wanted to get your take because it's been a great topic to kind of unpack. Priya's story, you've written about it. How do you think these big box stores like Kroger or Walmart, how should they negotiate the idea of the ethnic food aisle? Is the ethnic food aisle just something that should not be there in the first place?
I mean, it's such a fascinating topic, the ethnic food aisle in a large grocery store. And, it's a really tough question to answer. I don't think even in Priya's story was amazing, and she had so many different voices from food makers, from grocery store executives, I guess. And so there didn't seem to be any consensus really behind, what to do about these products. Should we just put them in one shelf? And some folks felt that they would be better served by being with other sort of like products, and others didn't, think that would be good. And I really think it depends on the place that this supermarket is in, like what community they are at.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not much of a supermarket shopper because I live in a very urban area, because I can go to, a little market here and there. But actually now I do have a supermarket that just recently popped up in my neighborhood. And I live in a very heavily Caribbean American neighborhood. And so there is a shelf for like this one brand of Jamaican foods that people, just may find that really convenient, and it just works. So it really depends.
So with the ethnic food aisle, I wonder, I agree, like there is some convenience there. Like, I know where I'm going to find certain Chinese ingredients, like what you would identify as like Chinese ingredients, like hoisin sauce, for example. I would like find it in the ethnic food aisle if I was in like Maine wanting to cook a certain dish and there wasn't an H Mart nearby. So I could see the convenience element, but also the othering of these ingredients and like putting them in this like weird package together, putting Mexican next to like something that you'd find in like Turkey and then Aleppo chilies in the same spot. It just seems like it's racist.
Well, that part is where it gets kind of not so helpful, right? If you have like maybe say you have like a Mexican seasoning blend, right? And it's next to the Chinese stuff. And then there's like this whole spice section that maybe has cayenne pepper and like, I don't know, onion powder and other stuff. And that Mexican spice blend isn't there. Like that's not that great, of an idea. So that's where it gets like, okay, you want to put these international or ethnic foods. Actually, international would be better, but
I feel that's the word I try to use too. We don't say ethnic food really.
Well, that's the first one I came up with, because like ethnic makes no sense, as Priya Krishna pointed out in that piece. It would make a lot more sense to me to not have them all grouped together just for the sake of them being American, but like then not even like Italian is part of that anyway. For the sake of them being sort of Western European foods, that doesn't seem like a good purpose in its own.
Yeah. Let's pivot to your reporting in your column and talk about chili peppers, because it seems, and chili powder and chili flakes and dehydrated chilies, because it seems to me like this is a really good time right now as we speak to be cooking with chili peppers, because there has been a greater effort to identify peppers from different regions to keep them fresh. But I wanted to hear a little bit about that story and really what's so special about the chili pepper these days.
Well, so in that story, I learned a lot too. And I found that, yes, there's so many different types of pepper that you see chefs using, that you see in recipes. There's Aleppo pepper, there's like Sichuan pepper, there's Urfa Biber chilies. There's, it can make somebody like, their head explode a little bit or think that they need to stock up on a lot of things. And what I found is that a lot of the times it comes down to the processing, not so much like some sort of varietal. And, over time, folks in different regions have grown chilies so that they slightly differ, so that they're like from that region, so that you call them Aleppo peppers. But it's also, but the thing I think is special about Aleppo peppers is the way it's been processed, which is like, it has that crispy texture to it.
It absolutely has that
right?
textural element to Aleppo.
Exactly.
Absolutely. It's really prized, that texture. Yeah, exactly.
So it's not really about so much the varietal than the processing.
Yeah.
And then there's the gochujang.
Yeah.
Gochugaru.
Gochugaru, yeah.
Garo, the flakes, not the paste. And that has a really great flavor from being sun-dried. And so it's all about the processing.
It's a cool story, and we'll link to it. But also, on the contrary, on the flip side, when you see a recipe just call for cayenne pepper, big air quotes there, what do you think about that? Like when you're actually, because cayenne isn't really saying much.
No, it's not. So many different types of peppers are cayenne, meaning they're like this long, skinny family of peppers.
Yeah.
I would say it's not like one varietal. There's many different varietals of cayenne. I think it means because it's been so established from large spice makers like McCormick as this fine red, medium hot chili powder. And so that's like a generally understood ingredient when you call for cayenne. Now, I don't know if that's changing because there's so many different other options, but yeah, I think it's been branded as a certain type of processing.
And I think more folks, more home cooks, our listeners would be interested in cooking with different peppers if they knew there was more out there than just cayenne. I think it's like on the recipe writers, like it's in their like court to kind of call for more than just cayenne.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
actually make that effort to research. If you're cooking a general cookbook, like maybe think of maybe gochugaru works there, and it's even not Korean. Maybe it's some other pepper.
Or maybe we should write like a fine chili powder or a flaky chili powder, which could be a Sichuan type of chili flakes or a Calabrian type, and it's pretty much fine either way.
You write about sugar in one of your columns, and I wanted to hear about it. It was a great piece, and it really took off online, and how there isn't a one-size-fits-all for sugar, though we oftentimes see that in recipes. What is it? What did you mean by that when you wrote that line?
Well, sugar is really fascinating, but it seems like in recipes, de facto, it doesn't seem, it is sort of pretty well established in American restaurant recipes that sugar is granulated white sugar. Yeah. That's not the norm. That's not the go-to in many other places. And it wasn't, it wasn't that long ago that it was, this very fine ultra-processed granulated sugar. Also, I think it's really interesting that, the brown sugar we have, light brown and dark brown, these were granulated sugars that had the natural molasses taken out of them during the granulation process or the refining process, and then have a certain amount added back to make that perfect amount of light brown or dark brown.
The aesthetic of the brown sugar, we all know it, right?
Well, this is all for consistency's sake, I think. But many other cultures, they use sugars that already have the natural molasses still in them because they didn't go through this really backwards process. Yeah. And they're wonderful and they taste amazing, and they're deserving of, I guess, use in all kinds of things. You call them
like rock sugar in some ways.
Rock sugar. There's plum sugars.
How do you shop for these sugars?
Well, a lot of them are specialized in or like well known in certain cuisines. So, if you cook a lot of Southeast Asian cuisine, you're going to find you're going to go to a place that has plenty of types of palm sugars and coconut sugar. So, and they're amazing, and I use them in everything now. You could use, and that's the whole beauty of this. It's like you don't just have to use this for Thai food. You can use it. I use demerara sugar because, again, I live in a Caribbean neighborhood, so I've had turbinado and demerara
sugar in the raw, you may call it.
Yeah, but it's like from like these Trinidadian brands and stuff like that. And I've been using that for my baked goods forever. And I'm like, this is a lot better. It's like, it tastes good.
Yeah, it
has a taste rather than not, right?
Exactly. And you write in the column in Shelve It about how these products have flavors that we sometimes don't actually observe when we're cooking with these commercial commodity products like the Domino box. Are there other products that you plan? We haven't really riffed on your next 5 columns, but are there other products you'd like to dive into?
There's so many. Let's see. Well, I'm writing about sesame oil right now. And
Yes, you
there's
are.
such a huge range that
Yes.
it's mind-boggling. And that makes me think of all kinds of other oils that really have kind of gone the way of like some heirlooms, vegetables before it became popular to bring them back.
Yeah.
But, they're squash seed oils. I've had some amazing ones. But, it's just so hard to find anymore because you got these like huge industrial oil machines
Yeah.
that it's just like, it's really hard for people to think about, the cost differences and what that's worth. And, it just falls out of fashion sometimes, honestly. And fashion happens for many different reasons. Not all of them are like, linked to huge conglomerate food makers. It's many different reasons. So I think oils is really interesting.
Well, you draw the parallel in your piece about how olive oil in the 1990s really wasn't a commercial thing. And we wrote a story on Taste a couple years ago about how there was a big junket in the 90s. And like all these chefs were invited to Italy and all of a sudden olive oil became popular. But now we've got sesame oil, and it seems that we're at this moment with sesame oil where cold pressed sesame oil should have its olive oil moment, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And also sesame oil doesn't have to be super dark and super flavorful. So to your point, there were some comments in the story that we're working on right now. You could have a lightly toasted sesame oil that won't be, you can deep fry with it and it won't taste too sesame-y. There's so many different variations.
Yeah, listener, check out that story. The opening line is amazing. I love the opening line, so watch for that. It's a really good one. I want to wrap up and hear about some of your cookbook work because you're working on a cookbook now. And what can you tell us about that book?
Well, I'm co-writing a cookbook right now, which is a new adventure for me. I've never done this before, and I'm working with the chef and owner and co-owner, both co-owners of Winsun and Winsun Bakery. And it's a really amazing Taiwanese-American restaurant and sister bakery. And so I guess, it's been a really interesting process because of the pandemic happening. So it's been like a 2-year process now, but it's a lot of fun. But it almost stresses me out more to work with chefs because I have to do them justice. And it's not just my story that I can, riff on and, tell. So I just, it's a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah, the collaboration process, I've not really, my relationship with chefs is different. Much respect to you for taking on that responsibility.
You've done that with Dookie Hung now for one amazing book. And
thank you for that. I feel like Dookie and I just like kind of, we mind melded a bit. And to me that collaboration wasn't traditional. We're like partners on it more than traditional collaboration agreements, which is kind of getting into the weeds a little bit. When you take on the responsibility of kind of getting into the voice of the chef, that's hard. Yeah. That's really, really hard. I've not done that. Like Dookie and I are in a different zone, and I don't think it's as difficult as what you're doing. So props to you. When's the book out?
A year from now, basically next fall, 2022.
That's amazing. Oh my goodness.
Let's hope it does come out then.
It will come out. It will come out. You're on your way. Well, Cathy, thank you for joining the Taste Podcast.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it.
The Taste Podcast is hosted by Matt Rodbard and me, Anna Heasel. The show is produced by Pat Stango and edited by Clayton Gumbert. Our theme music is by Steve Rydell. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter. Thanks for listening.